There is no shortage of extraction shooters that show off how much you can customize your guns. It's a great way to add depth to gameplay by providing multiple ways for you to change how a weapon performs. But I can't help but feel like armor always gets left out in the cold. Arc Raiders is one of the most well put together games in a long time, and even they fell victim to this. Let's get into it. The Arc Raiders Tech Test 2 has long passed, but it gave us a lot of insight on the game's design and what we can expect on October 30th. Today, we're going to dive into the armor system we saw, interesting design choices, and areas that can use some improvement, including my very simple idea on how Arc Raiders can add more depth to it by simply doing what they already do. But before we do, I'd like to thank my channel supporters. These absolute legends help make this kind of content possible. And a special shout out goes to my Florida Man Alligator tiered supporter, the Tranimal. All of your support is truly appreciated. Okay, for the sake of those who didn't get to play in the tech test, I'm going to quickly break down how the armor worked in Arc Raiders. Unlike games like Apex or Warzone, your armor isn't a direct HP bar that exclusively takes damage before your base HP. While the armor has its own shield HP, every time you take damage, you will take damage directly to your base HP as well. However, how that damage is distributed will be determined by the mitigation rating of your armor. They were 23% mitigation and 50 HP for light armor, 45% mitigation and 80 HP for medium, and 65% mitigation and 120 HP for heavy armor. And for as long as that shield had HP, when you take damage, the shield will take the mitigated portion of that damage while the rest of it is taken as direct damage to your HP. This type of system creates interesting dynamics and forces you to answer questions. Questions like, which do you heal first, your HP or your shields? Which item do you use first and when? While also creating a demand for items of various types, instead of just relying heavily on those that repair your shields first. With all this in mind, it didn't take long for the community to discover that despite having a 15% movement penalty, requiring significantly more materials to build, and requiring a high tier augment to even wear it, the heavy shield was by far and away the strongest piece of gear you could have in a gunfight. For those of you that follow Arc Raiders closely, this information is nothing new, and since then, Embark have made it clear that they agree and will be addressing it, though they haven't really given any indication as to how. Okay, with that out of the way, even when heavy armor has been balanced, I still feel this is one of the weak points in the overall Arc Raider combat design. Arc Raiders is aiming to make an extraction shooter more accessible than it ever has been in the past, so I understand there's going to be a little bit of a limit on how much complexity you can add to a system. However, I'd make the case that when it comes to armor, they can afford to give it a little bit more depth. How much more? Well, they have a ways to go before they can be accused of not being simple, so a lot more. Let's just compare how Arc Raiders handles weapons versus how it handles armor. Weapons are grouped initially into rarity grades: gray, green, blue, purple, and gold. Each group scales with what it takes to craft them and how expensive they are to maintain. And even within these groups, there are a variety of choices with dramatically different playstyles. These weapons can be further augmented and tweaked to create a gray area on where they stand on their overall effectiveness. Take for example, the humble Rattler or Stitcher. These were the first weapons you were handed in the tech test, and they left a lot to be desired, especially when compared to their higher tiered counterparts. However, just like all the other weapons, you can directly upgrade them 3 times and add attachments, which also have their own tiering. Upgraded versions of these guns with attachments can and will contend with their green or even blue level counterparts in the right situation. For example, despite the massive cost differences, the Renegade will have a hard time contending with an upgraded Rather in close range, and the Torrente will have a hard time dealing with it at long range. While there will be a situation where this isn't true, generally speaking, you're not guaranteed an advantage just because the rarity of the weapon is higher. The nature of the weapon's purpose and the situation you're in will matter a whole lot more than the rarity of the weapons being used. And that's more or less how the weapon system works. Now let's compare this to the armor. There's 3 rarity grades, 1 choice in each, and that's it. Now, I understand if your initial reaction is to just keep it simple. After all, one of the things that makes Arc Raiders accessible is the fact that you don't have to learn half a dozen bullet tiers that correspond to tiers of armor and so forth. but I'd like to make the case that the way the weapons were done is a clever way of adding depth without overburdensome complexity. I feel like the easiest thing to do is to have armor mirror the way weapons work, making it consistent with the game's systems and easy to learn. Here's an example of what that could look like. You can start all armor at gray or green or whatever. Upgrading armor increases its rarity and upgrades stats. Now from here, there are a lot of levers you can pull as you upgrade. Total HP, mitigation rating, movement speed reduction, just to name what's already available, can be buffed as the armor level is increased. Depending on balancing, you don't even need to have it be 1-to-1. You can have medium or heavy armor only be available at certain tiers. You can start heavy armor off with significant movement penalties and have all armor start at lower mitigation and HP than they were at the tech test, except for probably light armor. As you upgrade the armor, each level would require more materials and higher unlocks in your workbenches to even become an option, which would consistently reinforce the need for a variety of items for crafting purposes. But in terms of playstyle, it doesn't just have to be a race for more durability. We can also add attachment slots as you level up said armor. If it were me, I would aim for making it a choice between durability and utility. Light armor would start off with an attachment slot and scale to have the most by the time it was done upgrading. I'm thinking in the neighborhood of somewhere of 4 to 5 slots, while medium armor would stay at 1 slot at green and only max out at about 2 or 3, while heavy would get 0 until it was maxed out where to only get 1. With this setup, we would be encouraging a meaningful choice between brute force staying power and utility, and open up the possibility for specific playstyles. Here are just a few examples of attachments that I thought of. Bear in mind, they themselves can have rarity differences to give further nuance between tiers, just like weapons. The first attachment example is, when armor is full, damage mitigation is at X value. This value can increase with rarity, but it should not exceed the heavy armor's max value, making it more valuable for light, less so for medium, and ineffective for heavy. Another example could be, when armor HP reaches 0, you gain full stamina for X seconds. Now this can scale, starting off with an instant refill of stamina but nothing further, all the way until infinite stamina for 4 seconds. The lighter your armor, the more likely you are to have it reach 0 at a meaningful time during a fight, or at a good time to help you get out of one. Another example could be, if armor remains at 0 for more than X seconds, it will start to heal your base HP for Y amount over Z seconds. You can even build attachments that boost traits gained in the skill tree. For example, reducing your ability to not be noticed by arcs, or have them be less accurate when attacking you. As you can see, there can be meaningful attachments to add to light armor that would give it a distinct reason to exist and continue to use despite not being able to muscle its way through a direct fight. Heavy armor could lean into the survivability, but at the cost of utility and speed, while medium can be given the option to just be a balanced choice. I feel like this kind of system would be both easy to implement and easy to teach, while providing meaningful playstyle choices as you scale on your power level. So if you had the power to add an attachment to this system, what would you make? Reasonable or not so reasonable add-ons to this system? Put it down in the comments and let's see where that goes. And if you want to continue the conversation or have a place to link up with other hyped raiders, I'd look into our Discord. We are constantly having civil and interesting discussions about arc raiders and other extraction shooters in the meantime. The best way to support the channel is in the description. Like, comment, subscribe. Thank you so much for watching till the end, and until next time, good hunting.